All right, we're live. Let's roll. Well, welcome to Double Fries No Slaw. It is March 7th. We're here with you guys hanging out again. Myself, TJ Pittenger, and Richie Barnes. Richie, how was your week? I know how your weekend was. It was rough. We'll get into that later. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm surviving. Did a bachelor party this weekend, and it was fairly tame, but still, I'm not built for a 3-day bender like I've been on right now.
What's funny is you say you were on a 3-day bender. You told me you went to bed at midnight last night. I was up later with the kids last night than that. I was expecting you to say oh yeah, then we got in the strip clubs and we were out partying. It was 4 a.m. and you're like, yeah, I went to bed at midnight after watching the fight. And I'm like, that's not. Yeah. That's just a normal night. You're not.
Well, you got to think we were out of the house at 8 a.m. to play golf all day in the sun drinking, and then so. It's rough. I'm not built for this. I'm definitely not.
Well, Godspeed and a quick recovery. We've got a fun show planned tonight. We've got a special guest that we'll get to in just a moment. But before we get started, I want to remind you that Double Fries No Slaw brought to you by Guthrie's in Tallahassee. Visit both their locations at 1818 West Tennessee Street and 2550 North Monroe. I've been saying that for 8 or 9 months now, and I forget the Monroe address every single time. So I have to kind of stall and look up an address or whatever. So visit both their locations, get your gut box, Double Fries No Slaw. Richie, we've got an exciting guest on. We've talked about this. We've hyped this. We've previewed it. We had some scheduling things kind of come up, and anniversaries and Valentine's Days and different things come up. But we are excited and I'm going to grab him real quick and bring him on. We're excited to have Mike Farrell on from Rivals.com. We've talked a ton about not getting into the minutia of recruiting. Mike, help us out here. You were the recruiting guy, and now you've kind of moved into not just recruiting, but now you're doing both recruiting and football. How are you doing tonight? Before I get into all that
Good. Stuff. Doing good. Yeah, it's a transition. I'm still, following recruiting very closely, but they want me to focus on college football, the transfer portal, which is a nightmare, and NFL draft as well. But obviously I can't stop following recruiting and all these kids that, the Travis Hunters and Sam McCalls of the world I still talk to and follow.
We definitely want to get into some of those guys. Florida State's putting together a pretty good class right now. It's obviously very early, and don't want to get sucked into the Miami of celebrating classes in March, our rivals to the south. But we're excited to chat about that. We talked a little bit off air. I won't go super smoke and mirrors on this, but the next time you're in Tallahassee, I'm going to need you to – I know you've been – I know that the pandemic makes everything crazy. I'm going to need you to stop by Guthrie's and get a full review and rating. I'm sure you've had something similar like Zaxby's or Raising Cane's or whatever.
Yeah, I'm currently planning – to do that in a probably over the winter. I got to get back and I just went to the doctor last week. I gained 15 pounds in the winter up here. Now Double Fries sounds awesome, and now I'm hungry. And it's just up here. It's dark at 4:30. It's cold. All you can do is eat and drink, and so that's really the last thing I need right now. Now, when I go back to Tallahassee, if it's in the winter, which I usually go to Florida in December, I didn't this year, I'll definitely check it out. And my experiences in Tallahassee, especially at Florida State, have been great. I mean, it's a really great campus. I did get pulled over once by the cops there. I didn't like that. But beyond that, overall, it's been a good experience.
We've had good and bad experiences with Tallahassee PD over our years, so
they don't like me.
I totally get it. So I want to ask you this. Let's start here from a national perspective. Can you talk to us about Mike Norvell? What the perception of Mike Norvell is? Obviously, comes into a massive program like Florida State in the middle of a pandemic after their worst couple of seasons in 4 decades, and I don't even know how you could rate a season like 2020 or a year like 2020. But what is the national perspective of Mike Norvell? What are people's thoughts on the direction that he has the program heading?
Well, when he was hired, obviously the Memphis program was going very well. Offense there, producing. He's got a great offensive reputation from his days at Arizona State and other places. So, a lot of people felt it would be what is needed because Florida State, defensively, people thought they would be okay, at least better than they were last year. They had some injuries, obviously, and some guys didn't play, but the offense has been the problem. I mean, the quarterback play has been horrible. The offensive line's been atrocious. And so, they wanted an offensive hire. They felt this was the guy. Now everybody thinks there's no chance he's going to turn this program around. When you're talking about the national perspective, they're like, okay, Norvell's going to be out after another year. They're going to have to get another coach. Florida State will never be back, blah, blah, blah. That's the perspective based on the COVID year. I think we have to obviously wait and see. This is his first true recruiting year, and it's still not a true recruiting year because the spring evaluation is canceled. There's no junior days. He can't get out and meet kids. So as a new coach going into a situation where you can't be face-to-face with kids, I couldn't think of a worse situation for a new coach at Florida State. So we got to give him some time. Recruiting's coming around, and we'll see if the play on the field does.
Florida State's schedule is not very easy. It didn't get a lot easier for him this year. They open up with Notre Dame. They go to Clemson, to Florida, to North Carolina, and then they get Miami at home, which that's not a cupcake either. Maybe that's the easiest of the 5. I don't know, but that's still not very tough. A team that beat you by like 30 last year. That could be 5 losses right there, and Florida State really needs to go 6-6, 7-5. How good can Florida State be? Is there chance? Obviously Clemson's probably a no, but are there chances for upsets along the way? Can they do kind of what they did against North Carolina last year, or what's all that kind of come down to? I know it's early for it, but what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, it's never too early to look at the schedule, but it's going to be difficult. Notre Dame, I don't expect to take much of a step back. They're still who they are, offensive line. They're going to run the football down your throat, and they really bullied Florida State on the line of scrimmage, and that's not going to change in 1 year. Clemson's Clemson. Trevor's gone, doesn't matter. DJ Wangalele's in, and that offense and defense is just absolutely loaded. So North Carolina with Sam Howell, we see how many points they can put up when they're on. Now they lose quite a bit on offense when it comes to 2 running backs, but they've still got depth at wide receiver. So that's a tough one too. Miami's going to be difficult if De'Ara King's healthy. Boston College is no easy victory, especially up there in November and Florida. So what people have to understand, though, if they have another year, let's say they go 4-8 or 5-7 or whatever, this was a disaster that he inherited. Willie Taggart inherited what I would call a 2-car accident. Because Jimbo just sort of gave up at the end and just stopped recruiting, and he knew it was out. But he turned it into, a 60-car pileup, and that's what Mike Norvell is trying to untangle here. So it's going to take more than just a year, a shortened year of COVID, and then one more season, and then they're back to Florida State competing with Clemson in their division. That's just not going to happen. People have to be realistic about it. The problem is Taggart didn't get any time. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on people to say, well, you gave Taggart, 1.5 seasons. You got to get rid of Norvell after 2. Let's move on. And that's the worst thing they could do.
Yeah, I certainly don't. I don't see them making. Especially with the pandemic and everything else that they've run into, I don't see them making a change that quickly. A bright spot has been the transfer portal. You mentioned that with your kind of workload. I'm sure that made a lot more work for people in your situation, highlighted by Mackenzie Milton. And we'll talk about some of the other transfers in just a second. But if Milton's healthy, and that's the big if, but if Milton's healthy, what does that do for Florida State?
It certainly helps. They need somebody with experience. They need someone with a chip on their shoulder. Milton certainly has that. He was an unbelievable football player for UCF in their national championship run, air quotes there, and really hard to game plan for, difficult to stop because, he can extend the play. He can do a lot of, Johnny Manziel type of magical things that you don't expect. When you think you've got him, you don't. that injury was horrific. I don't know how far he's been cleared. Obviously, I don't know how much that's going to affect his mobility and everything from his throwing motion to his arm strength and all that stuff, because a lot of that comes from your base. So I really don't know what Mackenzie Milton we're getting. If they're getting the guy that was at UCF, it's going to be a absolute difference maker. It's going to be similar to De'Aaron King being plugged in at Miami when they had quarterback problems, and those problems were solved, and also a lot of offensive problems were solved because you got a guy that just has that it factor about it. But I just don't know how healthy he is, and I don't think anybody really does.
Yeah, I think once we get to the season and we can see that if he is healthy, my take is that he probably puts you if Florida State was just kind of on par with all of the bottom feeder or ACC teams that they played last year, right? Like they were just right there competing with the. And so if McKenzie's healthy, he maybe elevates you past those teams, right? Like I don't think he does anything for your chances against Clemson or Miami or Notre Dame or Florida. But then when you do play Syracuse and you do play NC State, like that's where you've got a shot to then win those games and maybe get to that 6-6 mark would kind of be my take there.
Yeah, that's going to be the key. I mean, obviously last year they started off the season losing to Georgia Tech. You assume they don't lose to Georgia Tech with quarterback play. They got crushed by a not very good Louisville team. You assume that, again, with an offense and quarterback play, that's not going to happen. NC State, again, that's a 2-touchdown, 3-touchdown loss. Now, all those teams aren't on the schedule. The winnable games on the schedule, obviously Jacksonville State, Wake Forest, Louisville. I mean, we'll see how they rebound, but they were just such a disappointment last year. Syracuse, UMass, NC State. You could say they have a chance to beat Miami. Don't know. We'll see how good Miami is. Obviously, Boston College, they have a chance to beat. I'm penciling in losses to Notre Dame, North Carolina, Clemson, Miami, and Florida. And I know Miami's and Florida are going to tick off a lot of Florida State fans, but I'm being realistic about it as a national guy. That's 5. You got to win the rest to get to 7-5. Mackenzie Milton is that guy who could make that difference and keep you in games, or at least put you over the top in games that are close with teams like Louisville and NC State.
Yeah, and I think if Florida State can if they can get to 6-6 and then win a bowl game, or get to 7-5 and then win a bowl game, which that's not a guarantee by any means, and the path of losing those 5 and winning out seems rather daunting, because you almost always lose to somebody you're not supposed to, whether you're Florida State or Florida, right? Like they lost a couple of games they shouldn't have last year. And so the path probably more so looks like you need to upset North Carolina or Miami, because you're probably going to drop one other one along the way to a Louisville, to and it's somebody like Boston College up north. So not only Milton, Norvell brought a lot of guys in the transfer portal. Keir Thomas from South Carolina, Jermaine Johnson, Georgia, Jamie Robinson, South Carolina, Brandon Moore, UCF, coming off of an injury in 2019, and then Jarquez McKellen from Arkansas. Some big-time SEC talent, right? Transfer portal is not always a sure thing. Who out of that list of transfers that Florida State brought in, other than Milton, should Florida State fans be excited about?
Jamie Robinson is a guy who I think has a lot of talent. They can plug in, obviously they lose a bit in the secondary. So they needed to target defensive backs that could play immediately. He's one that stands out to me. Keir Thomas, I obviously saw him a lot more out of high school than we got to see him in college, but he has length, he has talent, he's got that ability to bend around the edge and at least affect the passer. And DJ Williams is another one who kind of blew up late in his recruitment, and everybody thought he was going to be an absolute home run, sort of a high 3-star home run for Auburn and a good fit for them. I think he's an exciting running back and is going to help that offense quite a bit there too. And you have to be excited about the young offensive linemen too. They had 2 true freshmen last year that did very well, and they'll be leaders and a little bit better next season. So, there's talent on the team. And, Florida could be upset too. I mean, they lost everybody on offense, at least. They lost all their receivers and their quarterback, and that's never helpful. And their offensive line hasn't been that great either. But you're right; they do have to pull an upset here or there. Get North Carolina and get their offense on a flat day, or take care of a rivalry game against Miami or Florida and upset them. And as you said, it can be done. I mean, there's no way LSU should have beaten Florida last year with their team. They had, I don't know, 60 scholarship kids traveling with them, most of them young, started as true freshman quarterback and still beat Florida. So you just don't know what can happen in college football. But I do like the additions in the portal. They're risky though. Kids are in the portal for a reason. Either their coach left, or they're coming off of an injury, or they just didn't get the playing time they want to. And, it's hit or miss. It's not as bad as JUCO, but it's a risky proposition. You don't want to have 8 guys on your roster impacting immediately from the transfer portal if you can avoid it. But Florida State has no choice.
You mentioned Florida. I want to ask about them, and then I'll hand it off to Richie. What Florida did obviously lose a Heisman Trophy finalist in Trask, lost Pitts, lost Tony. Their biggest playmakers on offense now gone. Are you hearing anything out of just kind of keeping an eye on the rivals? And now there's some chatter about Mullen not naming a starter between Richardson and Jones until later, when it kind of seemed like that's been Jones's job for like 3 years, just kind of like wait on. Any thoughts on how good Florida will be this year? Is the defense going to get any better? Because that is the most prolific offense they've had since Tebow, right? And the defense cost them a lot of games down the stretch. So thoughts on Florida, and then I'll pass it off to Richie.
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks there. I mean, obviously you had a great offense and a receiver group that was very, very deep, explosive. The running game was horrible. The offensive line wasn't very good when it came to run blocking. The defense was disorganized, but Grantham's back, and a lot of people thought he wouldn't be, and that's probably not a good thing for Florida unless he shows that he can get that defense to the next level. Emory Jones is a talented kid. They ran him all the time. He's a passer. I mean, he's got a really good arm, flick of the wrist type of cannon, but he's inaccurate, and he got more inaccurate through his high school career, which was kind of like a little red flag for us. We had him as a 5. We dropped him to a 4 because his accuracy just, fell. And he hasn't had too many game reps where he's thrown the ball a lot. So I can see why the competition's open. Both guys can run and are dangerous. But, can they get in rhythm and put the passing game on their back without wide receivers that are, established? So I think Florida takes a step back, and they were 8-4 last year, but you got to remember that was also all SEC schedule. There weren't any cupcakes in there. So they could still win 8 games, but to me, they could take a step back in the East there and susceptible to losing games. Now, the bad part for Florida State is they're getting them at the end of the season. I think they're going to be susceptible early.
So, Mike, looking ahead to, 2022 class, obviously Travis Hunter's the guy all Florida State fans are super excited about. Seems like the kind of like Derwin James type field where, Mike Norvell would really have to mess up to not get his signature. Just what do you guys think of Travis Hunter from a national level? And, I think you guys have him at number 12 in the country right now. Is he a good chance to finish in the top 10?
Yeah, I mean, he blew up at the pylon out in Arizona. I always want to say Vegas, but it moved to Arizona this year because of COVID. He blew up the weekend before we released our rankings, but it was the weekend after we had already met and locked him in. So, Travis is very vocal as far as complaining about his ranking. And, he's been a guy that to follow me and unfollow me and follow me and unfollow me. And I hit him up and I said, listen, the pylon evaluation goes into our next one, which I think is coming out in May. He's a top 5 player in the country. I don't know. I think he's a better wide receiver than he is a defensive back. But, Derwin James, if he wanted to, could have played wide receiver and been dominant as well. Travis isn't as physical as Derwin, but He's much better offensively. He's a little bit more of a leaper, a little bit longer when it comes to catch radius and stuff. It's going to be interesting because he's going to get on campus and there's going to be a fight. Whether he plays offense or defense, the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator are going to wrestle it out and see. I think a playmaker like him could play both ways too. And I hope Norvell and his staff are thinking about that because he's just a very, very special football player, top 5 player in the country to me when all is said and done.
Yeah, we're definitely spoiled to have him. And then, last week, Florida State fans kind of got a surprise with Sam McCall committed to Florida State, the former UF commit. And what are we looking at him? Because if Travis Hunter does play on the defensive side of the ball, that's quite a haul right there for a defensive back class.
Yeah, and that's the way it used to be. I mean, when you'd have the Jalen Ramseys and the Derwin James and, guys like that, just the defensive back mentality of I want to play and practice with the best and become the best. And I think that, I don't think Travis had anything to do with Sam's commitment. And if I'm a Florida State fan, I'm holding my breath until December because this is commit number 2. And when there's commit number 2, there's always a possibility for commit number 3. But if they can hold on to him, he's a 6'3", potential linebacker down the line. I mean, he's such a big frame kid. But I think he's going to be a strong who's going to just be 8-10 yards off the line of scrimmage, kill you in the run game, play well against the pass as well. And then, if Travis decides that defense is where he wants to be, he'll be that long lockdown corner. And, they'll have a really good start to an amazing defensive backfield.
Yeah, and looking at the other side of the ball, we got Nico Marchio locked in pretty early. I think it's no secret Florida State's looking to take a second one. One name that pops up is A.J. Duffy. Where's Florida State stand with him, and what's up with Norvell and these Arizona quarterbacks?
Well, he's well known in Arizona. I mean, he's got a lot of connections out there from his days at Arizona State. He was a tremendous recruiter when he was at Arizona State. Very active guy. He was one of our top 25 recruiters in the country back when he was nobody before he, got the Memphis job and became super famous. He's actually a great guy. He's been very good to us at Rivals. And Nico is an important part of this class because he's out there recruiting everybody. I mean, he's talking to everybody, and as a quarterback, you need that. AJ Duffy, there's a lot of talk of him going to Arizona State. You got Jane Daniels, and that offense is a nice fit for him, and he would probably be the only quarterback they take in his class, or at least highly ranked like him. But if they can get both of those guys, their quarterback room was a disaster, obviously, and you need bodies. Whether they transfer out, who cares? Take 2 and figure it out. And if one wants to leave, okay. But right now I'm hearing Duffy more Arizona State than Florida State, but it's still in play for the Seminoles to land him.
Just from we've kind of talked some specific recruits, just from a macro perspective, does this speak? I mean, Norvell's done a fairly good job in the portal. He's got Florida State with a couple of 5 stars early, composite 5 stars here early. Are you shocked? I know it's March, right? So I know that we're not trying to go too crazy, but are you surprised with Norvell doing pretty well in the portal and recruiting 2022, even though it has been a 60-car pileup, as you said? Not necessarily his 60-car pileup, but he's the one pulling people from the jaws of life, right? So, are you surprised by that, or that just who Norvell is?
Surprised by McCall. That was a surprise because I had talked to a few people close to him, and again, this is why I say hold on to him. For dear life, because right before he committed to Florida State, he came out and told us Florida State was his leader, and I was like, he's lying. That's not true, because there's a certain team up in the Big Ten, with a guy named Ryan Day that he likes a lot, and they've talked to him a lot. Now, the advantage of a pandemic is kids can't get out as much as they used to, and Miami really took advantage of that last year with with Williams and Taylor and some of those guys at South Florida that I think might have gone elsewhere. I think Florida State could do that this year too, and I think that's what you're seeing. So McCall was a surprise. Hunter, not a surprise. Obviously, he's been committed forever. Marchiol, not a surprise either. We knew he was taking his little tour, and Florida State was where he was going to end up. So Mike Norvell can recruit. Florida State should be recruiting at a top 10 level. It's just the record, over the last few seasons has changed everything. I'm so used to plugging in a Bobby Bowden class in the top 5 as he closes with 8 kids on signing day, or a Jimbo Fisher in the top 5 as he just, rolls up and down the East Coast and takes who he wants. Now I'm just waiting to see what is next for Florida State. And sometimes it's a surprise like McCall, and sometimes it's a disappointment. And it's just a very difficult job. So I'm surprised that they have these 2 high-level kids committed so early. Hunter, not so much, but McCall, yes. And I think that's going to help them in state move forward. But they're going to have to recruit these kids as if they're uncommitted. Even Hunter. I mean, everybody on earth. I just talked to 2 college head coaches from major programs. I mean, both of these head coaches won their Power 5 conference this past season. And they are infatuated with Travis Hunter. And they are not going to stop coming after him, and nobody will. So if they do have like a 4-8 season or something like that, it's going to be very, very important for them to hold on to these guys, because this is the future. This season doesn't matter. It would help if they go 6-6, 7-5, go to a bowl. That'd be great. This recruiting class matters. This is the most important recruiting class Florida State has had in a long, long time.
How much of these kids, you chat with them quite often. As fans, we always think that the wins and losses do matter for how much do the wins and losses matter though? Like, what does Florida State need to do record-wise to keep both of them? Or can they just recruit them really hard and well and go 4-8 or 5-7, or is there like a floor? Like, is it like, man, if you don't go 7-5 or 6-6, like, you guys got to watch it. How much of that does matter for keeping the recruiting class?
Depends on the kid. It also depends on the level of negative recruiting, which is out there and will never stop. And it also depends on if we're going to have in-home visits after December 1st in this recruiting cycle, because we didn't have it last year. And that December period, right before the early signing period, when coaches can go into your house and they can flash, national title, rings or conference championship rings, or tell you everything bad about, Florida State that you want to hear, and everything good about their program. It can really, really sway a kid. Official visits are the same thing. If we have those, and it looks like hopefully we might in June and then into the season, but the NCAA hasn't figured that out yet. That's where you really get scared. Last year we never had any of that, and there were kids that just never took additional visits after March, and we always waited for them to try to get out and take those visits, and they couldn't, or if they did, it was unhosted, on their own dime. It was a different year. So I think a lot of this depends on how the pandemic affects recruiting moving forward. Now, Travis Hunter gives me no impression of a kid that's going to decommit from Florida State. So I don't want people, thinking I'm starting rumors on that. I'm just saying that, it's not like Duke is pounding down his door. I mean, we're talking Clemson, Alabama. We're talking, Ohio State. We're talking every team in the country that's won a national championship over the last many years wants this kid and sees how special he is. And that always worries me if I'm a fan of a program that has a kid committed like that.
You mentioned, he is very vocal for Florida State on, Twitter and social media. I think back to Jimbo Fisher's 2010 class when he got the commitment from LaMarcus Joyner and then Jeff Luke. And Jimbo would always talk about that's what turned the program around. Could a Travis Hunter and, maybe a Sam McCall, if he sticks, could that be a duo like a LaMarcus Joyner and Jeff Luke that, turns this program around for the better for Mike Norvell?
It certainly could help. I mean, it sends a message, and the message is, I believe, and there hasn't been a whole lot of belief in Florida State from recruits, for a long time. I mean, we're talking probably the Marvin Wilson class. It's been a while since you've really seen them. We used to cover junior days and summer camps, Florida State, and it was 4 and 5 star kids. And then I remember, when things started going bad, it was like, and this isn't anything against 3 stars. Three stars have been devalued because there's just too many people ranking 3 stars. Everybody's just giving everybody a 3 star. But when I see, 3-star such and such with offers from, NC State and Wake Forest and, likes Florida State, it rings odd to me. And Hunter and McCall had everybody in the country after them. And if they stick, it sends a message to the rest of the state of Florida that I believe, even if a kid from Georgia, even though he's close to Florida, so yes, it can send that momentum going. And I can't say that it's going to turn things around. I mean, that Florida State program in 2010 was in a little bit of a different shape than, we are now for Florida State. They weren't great, but they weren't this bad. So I don't know. They can be, but it depends on if other kids buy in.
Mike Farrell, thank you so much for hanging out. Where can people follow you, find your work, check out more of what you've got going on? Basically, give yourself some plugs here while we're on.
Yeah, the first place they can go is warchant.com, which is our Florida State site, obviously. Everybody knows about that. Rivals.com, writing stuff on the front page. I'll be doing stuff on actually tomorrow. I'm doing a D-tackle evaluation for the NFL draft and the sad story of Marvin Wilson a little bit. I'm not going to write an article about it, but just he's not plugged into my top 5 at defensive tackle, which is amazing to me as we thought about heading into last season. Rivals Mike on Twitter, Rivals Godfather on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm the oldest man on TikTok. It's fun though, man.
Do you dance on there?
What's that?
Do you dance on there? Or
no? Oh God, no. Absolutely. No. What they have this cool thing. It's a green screen, so you can pop a picture of Marvin Wilson behind my ugly head, and I could talk. And Instagram doesn't have that, so then you got to see my helmets in the background, and they got other things too where you could talk over videos and stuff like that. So I really like the technology, but I'm getting called, an absolute jackwad by 13-year-old kids. That's a little much to take. But I'm on there, Rivals Godfather, if you want to follow me on there. But I'm used to the 40 to 50-year-olds living in their mom's basement calling me names, much less than the 13-year-olds. But I don't care. As long as people are following what I'm doing, then I guess I'm doing okay.
The 13-year-olds that kick my tail in like video game, like Madden and NCAA and all that, like they all just cuss me out too because I'm so bad that they're like
bastards.
What are you even
bastards.
They're the worst. Man.
They're cocky bastards.
I chased 2 toddlers around all day. Finally sit down and play a video game at night. And I got 13-year-olds cussing me out and calling me names. You suck, and I'm like, dude, I'm trying.
They're probably killing you too. They're probably killing you for fun.
Yeah, I have a life. I get to play like 1 game a week, and they're just like they're on it all day. So anyway, thanks so much for hanging out. You guys go follow Mike on follow him on TikTok first, but then everywhere else that he mentioned as well. Mike, thanks for hanging out, man. When you're in Tallahassee, let us know, man. Guthrie's on us.
Double fries, man. I'm getting fatter just thinking about it. I love it.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
All right. No problem.
Thanks, Mike.
We appreciate Mike for coming on. Again, Rivals Mike on Twitter, Rivals Godfather. It sounded like everywhere else. Go check him out, rivals.com, warchant.com for the Florida State site for Rivals. Richie, you've had a rough weekend. You weren't the only one to have a rough weekend. You had a good weekend. You just kind of overdid it, and you're old now. So you weren't the only one to have a rough weekend. we'll just start with this. We'll start with a hungover, toned down, short. It was an easy edit.
I'm hoping I can have 3 wins for next week for this, because that would mean we win the ACC championship. I didn't care about the conference tournament prior to this weekend, and now I care a whole lot about it. I'm like, I want us to win this freaking thing.
I just didn't care at all. But it's not the regular season accolades were not what I cared about either. We'll talk about those on the other side of Richie's Basketball Minute.
It was senior night Wednesday at the TLC as the Fightin' Ham Bones played host to the Boston College Eagles, and it started off classless as could be, with the Vipers taking the first few minutes. BC would keep it close early, playing FSU close down just 16-17 early, but that would not be the last. From there, the Tribe would go on a 9-1 run, capped off by a big Balsa Copra Beach, a free throw, putting the good guys ahead for good. But on senior night, this day at the Tuck would belong to the former Burger Boy, the magnificent MJ Walker, who was hitting bombs regularly, channeling his inner Bryson DeChambeau at Bay Hill. That's right, MJ was on fire from deep, connecting 6 times from distance, leading Florida State with 18 points. The game was never really close, with the Noles soaring to a 29-point win, 93-64. From there, the Tribe would go on the road to play the Catholics, and Florida State was taken to mass, unfortunately falling 83-73 in South Bend. The Noles locked up the number 2 seed in this week's ACC tournament, taking place in Greensboro, North Carolina, 1 week before Selection Sunday.
Florida State starts the week in basketball well with their game against Boston College. I put in a pick for Florida State to cover the 19-point spread. I wasn't super confident, but I did take Florida State to cover the 19-point spread. And I was a little nervous early. I know the Caucasians were like, I get it, but like little nervous. I was like, okay, Ham, like I put in a pick for this. Like, let's not screw it up. Florida State rolls to a very easy victory on Wednesday. And then yesterday, I didn't catch the first half. I know you didn't either. You told me you caught the last 10 minutes. I did fall on my phone and talking with Harlan, who I miss Harlan here. I miss Harlan being on the show. I'm kind of Harlan, get back here, please.
We need to get some internet.
Yeah. Buy a house and get some internet. So just looked flat, not great. I'm going to watch the highlights later. Second half, I did watch a good bit of it. Florida State made it close a couple of times, got it down to even a 4-point game, and had the ball 2 possessions in a row with just about 2 minutes to go. A couple of turnovers, ended up doing them in. Had a wide open lane and a pass to Scotty Barnes, who was wide open underneath, and we clanged it off of his leg. That would have put FSU down by 2 with just under 2 minutes to go. And I think at that point, it's probably anybody's game. But Florida State, you can't go down by 17, 18 points in the first half and be on the road in the ACC and expect to come back and win. They almost did, which it got exciting late, but just could not do enough to pull off the comeback. Upsetting, because you definitely wanted that second straight ACC, but back-to-back not good showings on Saturday, right? They really should have beat UNC the week before, and they definitely should have beaten Notre Dame. I think the UNC loss is a little bit more forgivable, but definitely should have beaten Notre Dame yesterday. So it's frustrating, but if you go 3-0 this week, we'll forgive everything and we'll forget about it. Yeah, I'll edit every podcast where Richie says the regular season tournament's more important and harder and everything. I'll just edit all that out of the old podcast and we'll pretend like that didn't happen. So,
and I still definitely feel that way. So, shout out to Virginia. They played more ACC games, but they did what they had to do. They were only favored by 1.5 at Louisville yesterday. And I was watching the game after Florida State lost. Like, we got back to the Airbnb, and I'm like, all my friends, there's like 10 of us at the house, like, why do you care about Louisville, Virginia? I'm like, because Florida State lost. Like, I got to see this game. And then, of course, Louisville lets us down. But at the same time, that there's a chance Florida State is looking at UNC, then Duke, then Virginia to win the ACC championship in the tournament. And that'd be a phenomenal, that'd be like Brady going to, Breeze, Rodgers, and Mahomes back to back. So, it's disappointing. And I say it on here every single week, road games in the ACC are tough, man. They are tough to win. You could be playing the worst team, and it's going to be brutal, and you go down 17 in the first half like Florida State did. At that point, just to get within 4 in the second half was great. But I had that feeling watching those final 10 minutes. We ended up at the Ale House, and Florida State was always, man, they're going to get close.
They're just
not going to get over that hope.
You say ended up at the Ale House, like you didn't like purposely. Oh, we just ended up there. Like I don't know how this happened, but
well, it was a bachelor party, so we played golf both days, and like I purposely went out in the first group on Saturday, and there's an ale house right at the end of the road of the golf course. So like I told everybody, hey, we need lunch, let's go to ale house. And in my mind, I'm like, I gotta watch the end of this game, and then I wish I hadn't.
Yeah, frustrating. Again, you watched them come back and you thought like, oh, okay, they'll do it. They'll come back and win. And then Virginia was beating the heck out of Louisville. And you kind of thought like, oh, well, that's over. And then Louisville made it really, really close late and couldn't get the win either. So it was frustrating. But again, try and win your games this weekend and see what happens. I like us, I'd love to play Duke. I'd love to get Duke. I don't think it happens. They're so terrible. They'll probably be one and done. But we'll see. I'd love to avoid UNC. What does that? But that it may end up being what it comes down to. I think Louisville is who we'll play. I mean, if I had to guess right now, I think it'll be Louisville. Right? Is that the 3 options you said? Louisville.
Yeah. So I think so. We get the double bye being a top 4 seed. So I think our first game would be either Louisville or North Carolina, I believe. I'd have to double check the bracket.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. Now, Louisville, Duke, Boston. Louisville plays Duke and Boston College. So I think that's how it would work out.
So it could be Duke, then North Carolina, then Virginia in an ideal situation. And you said, I'd rather not play Carolina, but it would be nice to, get the rubber match and beat them and go on to, win their second ACC tournament going back to 2012, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So Florida State will play the winner of Louisville versus Duke or Boston College, probably looking at Louisville there. And then the semifinal will probably be Virginia Tech, but obviously an outside chance that North Carolina upsets VT. And then I think it's pretty clear we would play Virginia on the other side. I don't really see another team doing enough to upset them. Maybe Clemson gets hot, but I don't know. I think it'd be Virginia, which I'd be fine with. I think a rematch against Virginia would be great.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. Let's bracketology still saying like a 3 or 4, right?
I think 4 is probably the 4. If they win 2 games this week, they'll probably lock in a 3 seed. But I think the 4 is our floor, and then you just want to avoid Gonzaga's bracket if you're the 4 seed because Baylor has shown they're a little vulnerable. Michigan, Ohio State, the other teams being considered for a 1 seed, none of them scare me quite like Gonzaga does. So I'd feel okay if we're a 4 seed in any bracket outside of Gonzaga's bracket.
Yeah, for sure. Love to get up to a 3 by winning these next 3 games. 3 is the absolute ceiling, you think, even if we go 3-0?
Most likely. I think in the net we're 13th or 14th right now, which is what the NCAA, that's what they use mainly for their rankings. It's kind of like the BCS back when we had that, going back to 2013 era. But yeah, I think 3, like the top 3 seeds probably are ceiling, and I think the bottom 4 seeds are floor. So we should be right in there if I had to guess right now. And I think we got a big announcement coming up for next week with Selection Sunday coming up. So we'll save that we'll call that a teaser in the biz here.
We do. Excited for that. All right, I'm going to take you around the horn, and then we are going to wrap this thing up. Women's basketball lost a heartbreaker to Q's on Thursday, I believe it was. Florida State had a big lead. Syracuse slowly whittled it away. Shot an absolutely terrible air ball after fumbling the ball nearly out of bounds, and it fell right into it went way past the basket, fell right into a rebounder's hands for Syracuse. A girl laid it right up and in, and they won. Florida State played pretty good defense on the play, got them to not only fumble the ball nearly out of bounds, forced an awful shot, and just a little bit of bad luck gives Syracuse the win. Florida State's women's team is looking like an 8 or a 9, according to bracketology. So, game 1 of the tournament will be a tough one. Game 2 in the tournament will be a really tough one against a 1 seed. But I'm excited to see the Florida State women have a tournament berth and have a chance to win a game there. Softball split with UF. They lost on Friday in Gainesville. Florida hit 3 home runs, I believe. One was a 3 or 4 run homer. Florida State was never close in the game. And then on Saturday, got revenge in Tallahassee, winning, I don't know, it was like 62, 7-2.
Yeah.
9 or something. They blew them out. So split there. Baseball won an ACC series. Maybe they're getting back on the right track. They won Friday and Saturday, lost today by 1. Had a chance with the bases loaded in the 8th inning, no outs, could not push across a run, even with the bases loaded and no outs. And then beach volleyball upset number 1 LSU yesterday, number 11 FAU, and number 19 Georgia State. Those weren't upsets today, but beat 3 ranked teams in the last 48 hours. They are 10-0, and I think you're looking at a new number 1 team tomorrow when the polls come out. Florida State goes to 10-0 after beating number 1 LSU, number 11 FAU, and number 19 Georgia State over the weekend. There's your real quick update on what's going on around Florida State. Richie's hungover and ready to get out of here. We've been on for about 45 minutes. Richie, do you have anything else, or do you just want to run to shout-outs, or do you just want to run to your bed?
Oh, I'm going right to bed after this. Like I said, I am not built for we took Thursday off, me and the wife, to go to Bay Hill to watch it, Arnold Palmer Invitational, which was awesome, by the way. So it's a PGA event with 25% capacity. So there was no lines for anything. And then it was just like a golf weekend with the 10, 11 guys. We had a blast. Shout out Cody getting married here in the next 3 weeks. But yeah, I'm about done. I'm out of gas for this weekend, TJ.
So your shout outs for Cody. I don't know if I have any shout outs. Shout out my wife last week for our anniversary. That happened. We did it. Tomorrow on 3/8, I guess today, if you're listening to this in audio format, my wife and I got engaged 8 years ago on 3/8. So I guess I'll just give her the double shout out. Shout out to her for putting up with me for at least that long. And then we dated a couple years before that. So yeah, that's all I got. Check out the Big 3 Roll-Up. You can get all kinds of double fries, no slaw, and different merch on their website, big3rollup.com. Also, I started a new podcast, Bourbon on a Budget. If you are into any kind of whiskey that is not Scotch, if you're into Scotch, check it out so you can get off of that stuff. Corn and rye-based whiskeys is primarily what we chat about. So check those out. We appreciate you guys tuning in every week. Oh, I missed this last week. I nearly missed it this week. Hey, we've had all these coaches on the last few weeks. Number 1 beach volleyball team in the country. Sports are at an all-time high. Football's struggling, but sports are at an all-time high at Florida State.
Football recruiting's doing really well right now, though. So
recruiting's killing it. You just had Mike on to talk to you about it. Go check out Seminole Boosters. If you haven't signed up to contribute yet, your tax refund's coming through. Your stimulus is about to come through. Sign up for $5 a month. I don't know if they passed that thing or not, but if your stimulus comes through, sign up for $5 a month, make a one-time donation, whatever you need to do to be a booster and contribute to the program that we all know and love. That's my last shout out. Richie, did you pick the song last week or did I? I think you did.
I think I did. And I'm so mad because I was ready to go with Drake back-to-back for Florida State. So I have no song. I'll let you run with it because I am furious about how that season ended.
So I don't know what the song will be, but hopefully you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you here next week. Go Noles.